のきびと神宮
There's a pervasive concept present throughout works concerning small towns in modern fiction, and that is that the town folk are, more often than not, strange, or maybe eccentric is a better way of putting it. These all too common eccentricities can be explained, however, when we look at how many writers construct setting and tone. Small towns and hamlets have been a popular setting in various media for centuries. The role towns play in a story can be plentiful. Oftentimes they're in peril due to outside forces, or they're at risk due to the loss of a key piece of infrastructure, usually the mill that provides the jobs for everyone. And sometimes they hide terrible secrets. And sometimes they're used as idyllic representations contrasted against modern urban life. There are a lot of romantic comedies and dramedies that do this. Because many towns are located on major thoroughfares between larger cities, stories about towns are often told from the perspective of passers-through, or people who find themselves in these transitory locales as a result of some misfortune, or performing an essential task, or even just visiting relatives. These environments are inevitably filled with quirky and eccentric characters. There are a number of reasons why townsfolk in these stories come across as so strange and eccentric. To some extent, there's an element of art imitating life. Now, that's not to say that everyone who lives in a small town is eccentric in some way, far from it. Rather, it's because in the close quarters of a town, unusual characters in both fiction and real life make a bigger impact. A strange homeless guy ranting in your local restaurant is one thing. A strange homeless guy ranting in the only restaurant in town is a whole other thing. Beyond that, the smaller and more insular community means that people tend to get to know each other quite well. And this leads to kind of strangeness and familiarity at the same time. As 19th century Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler put it, the only normal people are the ones you don't know well. Meaning that, the closer you get to the people around you, the more unusual they seem, but not in an off-putting way. There are, of course, plenty of examples of this happening in fiction outside of small towns, in other metaphorically closed spaces, like the apartment complexes of Seinfeld and Friends, 30 Rockefeller Plaza in the show 30 Rock, and pretty much any club that doesn't do anything from the various assorted anime set in high schools. The apparent weirdness of these characters is a result of the intimacy and insularity of their respective settings. This obviously isn't the only reason, as this concept does seem to come up a lot more frequently in town settings than other settings. Beyond this is the sense of otherness caused by being in an unfamiliar place. Some towns seem strange and off-putting, even for people from nearby other towns. This feeling comes from the fact that the outsider lacks the familiarity and bonds with the townfolk that the other townfolk share. One simple way a writer may do this is by demonstrating the difference between how our viewpoint character perceives the eccentrics, contrasted with the way the locals perceive them. We understand that there's something odd right away by the very existence of someone like the Log Lady in Twin Peaks, but we have a better idea of the setting because the locals fully accept that someone like the Log Lady exists as she is. There's another old story formula that drives this kind of setting, the idea of a town with a deep and hidden secret. This serves as a key element in many stories going back through literary history. For instance, Dracula, in which Transylvania serves as our rural setting, and the secret of the Count being a vampire drives much of the drama. A later example is H.P. Lovecraft's Shadow over Innsmouth, where the town's horrifying connection to a race of deranged anthropomorphic fish monsters and ancient gods similarly drives the drama. This genre is prolific and has survived into the modern day as well. It's present in works like The Wicker Man. No, the original Wicker Man, Lucky. I swear to God, Lucky, I will come over there and I will grab you by the scruff of the neck and drag you back to the Ulaanbaatar bus terminal where I found you, okay? Okay? You understand me? Ah, okay, yeah. There we go. Like The Wicker Man. Or even later works like Capcom's Resident Evil 4.
Little rough, don't you think?
There have been humorous examples as well, like Hot Fuzz and Gravity Falls, which use the town's secret paired with a conspiracy that actively seeks to hide it to drive both the narrative and the humor. Some works like Eureka and the more recent Stranger Things feature outward forces acting against the town's best interest, driving the drama by influencing or conflicting with the lives of the mostly benign townfolk. Some cases, like Persona 4, feature a paranormal interpretation of both the town's secret concept and the growing bonds formed by the outsider protagonist and the town he integrates with. This arc of integration into a town is actually experienced by many of the characters in these stories, perhaps most famously Phil Connors from the film Groundhog Day and Dr. Benjamin Stone from Doc Hollywood. Maybe not most famously, but two examples of it.
$27,000 per annum and plus housing.
However, the most significant example and the main codifier for this whole concept in modern fiction is David Lynch's Twin Peaks, which I mentioned earlier. Twin Peaks uses both the eccentricities of its townfolk and the strange secrets of the town to drive both the humor and the drama of the story. The close-knit nature of Twin Peaks' population leads to a great deal of bleed-through between the various winding plots of the story, and Lynch goes out of his way to explain that the people of the town of Twin Peaks aren't really strange, despite their first appearances. Like, not really, at least. They exist in a strange world, occupied by a lot of strange characters, and Twin Peaks just happens to be this place where a lot of these strange people end up. That's something that our protagonist, Agent Dale Cooper, and various other FBI agents throughout the series, and even various other outsiders, learn as they're introduced to Twin Peaks as a setting. These characters aren't made stranger by Twin Peaks, but despite some offhanded comments, they're all more or less accepted by the strange place. Honestly, when it comes to this whole concept, the list of examples of various towns that have these eccentric characters in fiction, like, you could go on for days. There's so many. Everything from film True Stories, Parks and Recreation, Father Ted, even The Simpsons. There's just a plethora of towns like this in the media. I think that's because some familiarity with the setting is very important to almost any story. If we can buy into the setting, then we're one step closer to believing the story we're hearing. However, a story that's too familiar may fail to captivate the imagination without an enticing plot or interesting characters. In the familiar setting of the town, it falls on the townsfolk and their secrets and interactions to drive the story. These characters have to be memorable and human. They need to have clearly defined characters in order to stand out and be noticed. I guess a more succinct way of putting it would be that simply characters like this benefit from being eccentric.